excuse me. Holy cow. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Training Talk here on Personal Defense Network. I'm Grant Cunningham, and this is the show where we talk about you, about your life and how to protect it. In the next hour, we're going to explore how you can train and equip yourself to face, excuse me, your own worst case scenario, like coughing, and keep you and your family safe from harm. Now, we don't do religion or politics on this show, and you're not going to hear conspiracy theories or fringe commentary or any of that stuff. Just reliable information that you can put to use right away in your own life. And I hope that you enjoy it. And I also hope that you enjoyed it enough. Excuse me. I was not coughing until I hit the broadcast button. I was absolutely fine, like all day. But I hope that you enjoy the show enough to share it with your friends and your family and your coworkers, your neighbors, people in your church group, maybe something like that, and give them a chance to learn some about responsible, reasonable, and effective ways to defend themselves and their families. So, if you're new to the show, welcome. Glad that you're here, and of course, if you're returning, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us again. Believe me, I know how tough it is these days to find spare time, right? Everybody's really busy. So I appreciate that you took the time to watch this show. So I'm going to take a drink here really quickly and clear my throat because I really don't know what's going on here. All right. There we go. Drink water, people. Remember, Personal Defense Network contributor Caleb Causey always says drink water, and so I always have my little water bottle here. Anyhow, so tonight's show this is going to be an awesome show, and because every time my guest is on, we have a great time, and he is in Phoenix, Arizona, with immediate action combatives. I hope that's right. And of course, he is the one, the only Cecil Birch. Cecil, good evening.
How you doing, Grant?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Doing good. Now I get to sit and chat to good people about stuff I love to do. The day suddenly got way better.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Of course, it's always a good day in Phoenix, isn't it?
Pretty much. Actually, this week's been pretty good. We've had a rain storm kind of come through the last, 4 days now. So it's a little overcast, a little light rain. The temperature's been like 65-ish. It's wow. Great. It's perfect for us.
Did you get enough rain to overflow the flash flood gutters that are around town? Nope.
Okay. Nope, not enough. This we're way overdue too. We've kind of been dry since last summer. We had a pretty good rain up to last summer, and then we've been dry, so we're kind of overdue for that kind of stuff.
One of the things that surprised me the first time I was out of Phoenix is seeing all this stuff, and my host out there, John Abel, telling me, these are flash flood gutters and things, and here in Oregon it rains all the time. It's kind of normal, especially up here where I live in the mountains. Anyhow, well, I'm glad you could make it tonight. And one of the interesting things is that we were talking before the show started, and I'm going to be actually, I understand, and to the best of my knowledge, this is true, that I'll be kicking off the Personal Defense Network training tour this year with the first class, March 17th and 18th down in Phoenix. So we were talking before the show started, and of course, Cecil is going to be teaching on the training tour this year, of course. And so what kinds of things do you think you're coming up with for the training tour this year?
I think most of my coursework, probably 80% ends up being usually a combination of my basic 1-day immediate action jiu-jitsu class, or what William April calls just enough jitsu, which I like that name a lot as a class.
Just enough jitsu?
Just enough jitsu. That's his name for the class.
I love it.
Yeah, that's a good one. And then a 1 day of standing, defending against surprise assaults and dealing with somebody grabbing on and entangling you. Usually I do 1 day of each. And so that's the bulk of my coursework. So I'll probably hit most of that over, during the tour. That'll be most of the classes. I think I have one live fire class here locally end of March. But that's the only live fire during, for those few months.
Right. So where are you going to be traveling on the tour?
Oh man, let's see. Albuquerque, Calgary. I'm forgetting a couple. Oh, Houston. Yeah, I'm in Houston. That should be a really good class. Where am I in June? I know I'm in Miami.
Okay.
I have a bunch. Like I said, I was just writing them down because Rob Pincus is on me to get those classes up listed. So I was writing them all down and keeping track of what I had to send to him.
He's doing it, Rob. He told me he was going to do it.
I am doing it. I'm doing it.
Wow. So you're going to be all over the place. And
I've already done 3 this year for 2018 already. I'm already a little bit overwhelmed at this point.
Wow. Okay. I was going to make a joke about taking a left turn at Albuquerque. That's
yeah.
But, wow. Up in Calgary too.
Yeah. Yep. That'll be good. I've been to Canada a few times. So this will be my first time as the lead instructor of a course. So that'll be really cool. And I've never been to Calgary. So I always love going to new places. That's always fun.
Oh man. Cool. Well, there's going to be a lot of opportunities then to see you, but for the people who are watching to see you on the training tour, because you're going to be all over
I'm going to be all over.
Oh man. So tonight we're going to be now. I think it's fair to say that when your name is mentioned, everybody says you are the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean,
pretty much.
That's what everybody says.
Yeah, pretty much.
But you have got, oh man, you have got a phenomenal background, not just in jiu-jitsu, but you've got a phenomenal background in shooting and a phenomenal background in the subject we're going to talk about tonight, which is knife use. And yet people don't seem to know you for knives, for instance, do they?
Very much. I'm the jiu-jitsu guy, which is cool because it's what I love. I love jiu-jitsu, not just as a self-defense thing, but for all the other aspects of it. And it's an important part of my life. And the thing is, I just have this innate distaste for public PR, self PR. I think my dad brought me up. He was very much, don't talk about it, be about it type guy. And so, I always feel like a used car salesman when I start talking about my resume. Hey, what do we need to do to get you into Cecil's class today? So usually, people say, hey, what's your background? Give me your resume. And I usually try to shortcut it, 38 years of training, this July will be the start of my 39th year. And then I kind of talk about the more jiu-jitsu centric stuff maybe, but people don't realize, the first 15 years was no grappling at all. The first 15 years of my training was very striking and weapon centric, knife and stick. That was what I really did. It was, I kind of got dragged kicking and screaming reluctantly into jiu-jitsu. I didn't want to do it. Who wants to roll around with a bunch of sweaty dudes? That's just gross. So I fought it for a really long time. And, it was very much striking and I love the knife. I love training the knife. I had, I did tons. I have instructor certifications in a bunch of different Filipino martial art, knife centric, Indonesian silat and kuntao. And I loved them. One of my early instructors who was important, was one of the kind of the cutting edge type guys at the time in 84, 85, 86. He had a column in one of the martial art magazines. And he was actually one of the first guys to start talking about carrying a folding knife on a regular basis. This is when Spyderco was just getting started. Like this is 84. I think I got my first Spyderco in 84. And they only had a couple models at the time. But my instructor, Paul, was like, hey, this is the thing. A clip that you can carry on you without a belt or sheath or anything. And that thumb hole for easy opening. Oh, this is the thing. So, and I was a poor college student with, no money. So I actually gave up beer and pizza and dating for a few months to save up enough pennies to get my Spyderco. But really, since 1984, I've carried a knife and trained in it almost every day of my life. You know, and back then, that was the weird thing, right? It's so funny. People who are more, you know, who are not seasoned like you and me, Grant, and are coming upon this a little bit, you know, more recently, they look at it and go, well, everybody's got a knife, right? Everybody in the firearms community carries some kind of knife and all this kind of stuff. Well, back in 84, 85, nobody did. You know, I'm carrying around campus and they're like, what is that? Oh, it's a knife. Why are you carrying a knife? Well, I can open packages and I can do this and I can do this and I can do this, but it was just weird. But now everybody does it, right? So I've done this for you know, again, not to toot my own horn. Sorry, that wasn't that wasn't the point of the story. But it was just, I've been doing this a really long time. So when I kind of wrote an article on it, I just wanted to get the idea across. Maybe I kind of know what I'm talking about.
Well, you know, you talk about not wanting to toot your own horn, but, you know, Cecil, you could tell us that you had a horn. I mean, you know.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Right?
It is true. Even that feels wrong, though. I don't know. It just,
I understand that.
You know, a lot of it, I like talking about, trying to talk about facts, you know, real stuff, you know, hey, this is provable. This is what it is, as opposed to, hey, I'm a cool guy and here's cool stuff I did. So listen to me because I say this.
Right.
You know, I don't know that that's a particularly good way of going about it, but apparently sometimes you do have to toot your own horn at least a little bit to get people to listen to you. So
at least a little bit.
A little bit.
So I'm glad you did. So I'll give you a little bit of my background so you know where I'm coming from.
Okay.
And I guess I'm sort of knife agnostic. And what I mean by that is that I've carried a knife in my pocket since I was in you know, like 5th grade.
Sure.
And I mean, I grew up on a farm, and so I've always had a knife in my pocket, probably darn near every day, except when I'm on an airplane, since I was a kid. And in the early 90s, when I started defensive training seriously, of course, all the gun guys had a knife clipped in their pocket at the time. So of course I got to have one too, right? And that's sort of the uniform. And so, you know, I mean, over the years, I collected a few, right? So it's not like I don't like them, but I've, even after those classes, and I've taken a couple of knife classes, and so I've never really thought about the knife or considered the knife as a defensive tool. So I'm, like I said, I'm agnostic about this. I certainly have carried them in the past, and usually today I carry a slip joint in my pocket because I'm more concerned with cutting efficiency than anything. But I still have all these, you know, these knife, you know, Microtechs and blade Benchmades and Microtechs and, you know, Kershaw and a zero tolerance or two. And so, you know, all this nice stuff. But I am somewhat blade agnostic. So let's start sort of at that level and tell me about the knife as a defensive weapon and why someone who also has a gun might also want the knife as a defensive tool.
Really, for me, and this is coming from my own personal thoughts and how I view it, if we're talking about, like, I do have a firearm on me or available, the knife is a very specific niche thing. There is a time and a place in an entanglement where I don't care how good you are. I don't care the knife. I don't care. I'm sorry, not the knife. The gun. I don't care the setup. You won't be able to get the gun out, but you will be able to get a knife out, because with a knife in any kind of entanglement, whether standing or on the ground, all you need to do is to have this articulation with your elbow to get a knife out. If it's set up properly, okay? That's all you need. Whereas with the gun, obviously, to get a gun out, I'm going to need to do a little bit more than have this to get the gun out, to get it indexed on the target, to be able to pull the trigger and to continue to use it so it doesn't get fouled or jammed up. So the knife is I don't see it as the best standalone tool on its own, because the problem with the knife is it's probably the least predictable of results when you use it. You know, you can stick it in a guy and he collapses crying and quit, or you can, you know, stick a guy 18 times in the face and he goes, come on. So it's just so unpredictable. So I don't like it as its own thing, you know, unless for whatever reasons you can't have a gun, then it's something. But I do see it as a support tool in a, you know, in that area that nothing else will come out.
Okay, that's a different sort of a different approach to this than I certainly experienced in any of the knife classes that I took, where the concept was always, well, this is going to be the primary weapon for when you can't carry a gun. That was always how, you know, things were sold. And I think only lip service was given to the idea that it's some sort of an adjunct.
Yeah.
So this is the first time I've really heard this put forward as a reason to carry a knife.
Well, and I think here's the problem. Too many people come at this from their specialty, right? Well, regardless of what it is, firearms, right? You know, we've talked about this before. The gun guy wants the gun solution, even if running away is a better solution, or if pepper spraying the guy is a better solution. You want to fit the gun in. Well, the martial artist, the knife guy, the guy who spends 10,000 hours doing all this cool guy stuff and spends lots of money collecting knives and carries with him. Well, you want to justify why you're doing that. You know, hey, I train, you know, this form of Filipino martial art for, you know, 18 years and blah, 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 because I'm going to use it like this. So we end up crowbarring sometimes things that, now, I don't want to say it's wrong that way, but it might not be, it might not fit everywhere, right? And so is there, I mean, I think that is a justification. If you, there are some places where you can get away with carrying a knife that you can't get away with a gun. I've done that many times. California is a perfect example, right? You can carry a nice folding knife in areas, and you cannot carry a firearm or anything else. So, you know, that's better than nothing. You know, it's better than a harsh word in some cases. So if that's primary, because of that, should we have a little bit of ability to use it properly? Sure. But even that, we still have to be realistic in the performance of it. You know, every time you talk to somebody who's been stabbed, if they've been stabbed in the torso, front or back, everybody says the same exact thing. Either I didn't know I was stabbed, or I thought I was being punched. That's what you hear over and over again. I had one of my students who was a bouncer at a biker bar, and big brawl ensued, and he and the other bouncers got all the guys out, and the cops came and arrested people. He was walking back into the bar, and one of the other bouncers said, "Hey, Todd, you're bleeding." And he looks and goes, "No, I'm not." He goes, "No, on your back." And he puts his hand, comes away with a smear of blood. He'd been stabbed in the kidney, but thought he'd been punched in this massive brawl. It didn't affect him. It didn't stop him, right? He went to the paramedic and said, "Hey, what do I do? Let's take you to the emergency room and patch you up." He was back to work the next day. It wasn't, you know, so can the knife be an effective stopper at times? Sure, but we've got to be very realistic in it. And I do think that it fits better when we approach it from this multidisciplinary thing. Gun, knife, impact weapon, OC spray, handheld light, you know, pre-fight threat containment, all that kind of stuff. I think it all works together. You know, it's like concentric rings, right?
Right. Do you, it's interesting you talked about being stabbed, and apparently Hollywood is no more accurate with knife wounds than they are with gun wounds, because I watched a TV show from the, you know, 1950s just last night where somebody got stabbed once and he went down. Right. Yeah. So apparently knives were more deadly back then or something. I don't know.
Exactly. Just like guns, right?
Exactly.
Just like guns in the Old West. They can pick people up and throw them across the bar with one shot.
By the way, from the same show, I learned that a cult detective special holds 19 rounds. Just
Nice.
so. Anyway. So you mentioned the idea of stab wounds, using the knife as a thrusting weapon,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And I know that there are some people in the knife world who talk about targeting tendons and things like that to reduce an attacker's mobility, which sounds, to this gun guy here, sounds a little bit like, well, shoot the gun out of their hand or shoot them in the leg.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. It's a concept called biomechanical cutting. And I think the philosophy behind it's really good. Hey, if I cut the guy's tendon on the inside of his arm, he can't hold a gun, he can't hold a knife to stab me, he can't grab onto me. That's great. It's a great thought, and not to say it doesn't work. The problem is you don't know when it's going to work, right? Because for every time you can say, yeah, see this guy, it worked here, there's at least equal amount where it didn't affect anybody at all. You talk to any trauma surgeon, you talk to any police investigator who's, is like a detective investigating violent crimes and stuff, and they'll see plenty of people in the hospital. My daughter's a nurse. You'll see people at a hospital, and you'll see people come in with literally their forearm flayed right down to the bone. And when their hand's moving, you see the bones articulating, and they sign their own name on the admission papers with the arm that's flayed. So can that kind of stuff work? Sure. But what if it doesn't? Right? It's, again, the shoot the guy in the arm, right? Maybe you hit him and maybe it will stop him, but what if it doesn't and he continues? And the other problem, just like trying to shoot a guy in the limb, you got this little knife, a 3 to, for most usage for self-defense, you're talking about a 3 to 5 inch bladed knife at best. And you're trying to use that little thing and cut it just perfectly and hit parts of the body just perfectly. That's moving as well. I mean, the guy's not standing there, like a mechanical dummy. My friend Larry Lindemann calls it the dance of death, right? He locks himself out. You do all your cool dance moves around him and cut him up. Well, it doesn't work that way. He's swinging, grabbing, doing stuff, and it's easy to miss. So it's not to say it doesn't work. I just think the language we should be looking at is what's the most reliable, what's the most consistent, what's the most replicable stuff we can do. And that kind of targeting stuff, I'm not a big fan of.
This is, like I said, this is very similar to some of the ideas that come and go sometimes in the defensive shooting world. And you're talking about the guy with his arm filleted, it reminded me of, and there are still people out there who teach this, that, oh my, if you shoot somebody in the pelvis, it will break their bone structure and they will go down. And yeah, I'm sure that happens now and again, but there are lots of, orthopedic surgeons who can tell you about guys who have broken their pelvis in multiple places because of a motorcycle accident and walk into the ER.
Yep.
They may be in pain, but they're still ambulatory.
Right.
So and that's why it kind of, like I said, it kind of sounded like, well, shoot him in the leg or something that, oh yeah, well, good luck with that.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just, I don't want to stake my life or the lives of my loved ones on a maybe, right? I need to stack the odds in my favor as best as possible because the stakes are so high.
Right. So, how do you train people when we're talking about using a knife, and particularly in the entangled fight, which is where one of your areas of real expertise? How do you train people to do this? I know how we do it with a firearm. How do we do it with a knife?
Well, after doing, so much of this knife work, and I did all the classic knife training stuff and knife dueling, knife fighting type training and stuff. And where I came down to was pretty much a believer in what Craig Douglas talks about. The knife you use it for two things. It's get off me or stay off me. That's what it's for. So in an entanglement, the whole point is I don't care what he does as long as he's no longer on top of me or no longer holding on to me. So I'm going to get that knife out. I will point it at him. I'm going to hold it. And this is Craig Douglas's language, and I think it's very resonant with me. I think it makes sense. You hold that knife like a monkey holding a screwdriver, and you ram the point into either the guy's face or what Chris Fry calls the Y, the yoke, the groin, the femoral artery, the juicy bits underneath. And you shove that knife into either of those two places as often as you need to until he stops attacking you. He gets away from you. And then if he's at distance or you want to keep him at distance, you point it at those two places and go, stay away from me. If it injures him, I don't care. If it drops him, I don't care. If it makes him run away, I don't care. It's get off me, stay off me. So for most of my purposes, when I work with the knife and I teach people the knife, it's very much in that frame of we're entangled. I need, like I said before, sometimes in that entanglement, the knife is the only thing you're going to get out. So I get the blade out, I use it, I point it at those places, get off me. I'm going to use that tool to help get this guy off me, the bigger, stronger, tougher, faster, meaner guy who had the initiative to attack me and catch me by surprise. Okay, great. I'm going to use it. Now he's off me. I'm going to get away. I'm going to stop him. If he keeps coming forward, then I'm going to poke it at him. And that's, for me, that's really 99% of the knife. So here's the funny thing. I don't train the knife very much because that's the most unimportant part, right? Hold it like a monkey holding a screwdriver and stick the pointy end towards those two places and repeat. That's easy. I don't need to spend 10 years with all these weird manipulations. The hard part is controlling the position, right? Not letting him control me, having the space and the distance to use that. That's where I spend my time, and that's where I spend my time, my teaching time, teaching people. Yeah, do we do some weapons? Yeah, but it's already built on this empty hand base, because if I can control this guy where I can punch him, to where I can choke him, where I can armbar him, where I can hold him for the cops to come, where I can hold him for somebody to handcuff him, whatever, I can also get my knife into play. So I don't, it's not a tool focused mentality. It's dominant positional control or having enough space. Work that, and then the tools kind of fit in as needed.
Just as an aside, this may be the first time that anybody has ever used the phrase "the juicy bits" on Personal Defense Network.
You have to admit, though, that's very descriptive, and people understand what I said when I said
I'm going to remember that. I can tell you that, right? I'm going to remember that. So I find this interesting because one of the, in the knife classes I've taken, the monkey fist kind of thing was downplayed. It was much more, the saber kind of grip. And I did some fencing in college, so I'm familiar with this. But everything was sort of predicated on, get the knife out, get it around, get it into this grip. And that always seemed to be, no matter what knife you had, no matter how you were carrying that, seemed to be quite a bit of manipulation.
Absolutely.
To be happening.
Absolutely. And what you also see when you actually start doing that under pressure, when you're going to do that against a guy who's trying to fight back, one of the big things that happens over and over again is that knife goes flying away from your fist because you don't have good control with it. You see it all the time. Where you also see it is fencing. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. I fenced in college in the fencing club for a few. I didn't stick with it more than a couple semesters because I wanted to get to the saber, and they were making me go through the foil and the AP first, and I was kind of bored with that. But you know what happened? And I saw this in training all the time. Guys would get the the swords, the fencing swords, knocked out of their hands all the time, because we've got, and here's the thing, the fencing grip, right? Most of them's got all those little extra positions for your hand to hold on even better, and you still get it knocked out of your hand. So now we're talking about a couple fingers on this little piece of plastic, it's going flying. You know, as soon as there's some impact, either maybe you even stab the guy, boom, one time, and now it's out of your hand. God forbid that he hits your hand or something. So we see that all the time. Yeah, you know, it's not pretty, but that monkey holding a screwdriver, it's going to stay in your hand no matter how hard you have to thrust at somebody.
Well, again, opposable thumbs wrapped around, which of course we don't do in a foil grip.
Right.
And by the way, I've got a confession to make. The only reason I took 3 semesters of fencing is because there was a hot chick in that class.
Hey, that's as good as reason as any.
Okay. Is that a good? Yeah, that was
better than my reason. I was a martial art geek, and because Bruce Lee was into fencing, I had to do fencing. So
he was into fencing?
Oh yeah, very much so. His all his notes and stuff that were compiled in what they call the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. There's a lot of fencing stuff. He used a lot of descriptive fighting terms that he used fencing terminology to get the ideas across.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So forget the foil grip, forget the saber grip, monkey fist, and
monkey holding a screwdriver.
Monkey holding the screwdriver, which describes me, by the way. And so I'm sort of translating this as I'm sitting here because you know when you got knives here, you got to play, right?
Sure.
So I'm kind of translating this.
Yeah. Perfect. Exactly. Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Edge up, edge down, doesn't matter.
I don't care. I don't care. You know,
we're worried about that part, right?
It's the point. It's the point. You know, Craig is big on this. Chris Fry, MDTS training, another PDN guy. He's big on this. The idea is, if everything is point driven, the same methodology I use for the knife I can substitute with a lot of other stuff. Right? I can stick that tactical pen in my hand and I'll be doing everything identical. A screwdriver, whatever I can pick up, I can use exactly the same way. I don't all of a sudden have to figure out I don't lose anything. And that's and the point is the tough part. That's the part that does the real work.
So this is, because I'm thinking about one of the things, of course, that I'm a big proponent of is the defensive flashlight. Works for the flashlight too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So commonality of training.
Yep.
Things that you can reuse, right?
Yep. Okay. Over and over again. That's the thing. And we don't have to have, we all have X amount of time. None of us are independently wealthy and we can just train all day, right? We've got to fit in our day job and all family obligations and everything else. And but I have to train my striking, and I got to train my grappling, and I got to train my shooting and my knife and my impact weapon and my flashlight, my OC spray and my pre-fight threat containment strategies and fitness and financial stability and blah, 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 blah. Well, there's only so much time in the day, but if we can kind of simplify it down where it still has to be functional. It still has to be high percentage and replicable for most people. But if we can simplify that down and we've got this congruency across all these different areas, then it just makes our life that much simpler.
That's a very good way of looking at that, and I'm in full agreement. About lack of time, and sometimes I wonder, when we've got 15 million ways to do things, who's got time for all that?
Nope.
Right?
Exactly.
So at the beginning, you were talking about movement, elbow movement, and how accessing the knife requires less of that than drawing the gun, which is certainly true. But you said something. You said specifically if it's set up properly.
Oh yeah. So
let's talk a little bit about setting up properly.
Okay. Can I kind of preset this up?
Sure.
So, there's this big thing, and this is why I wrote that article in the first place is, you get a lot of people over the last year or so, some instructors and stuff say things like, we don't see defensive knife use on videos. So therefore, don't bother training it. Don't bother doing it. Well, I will agree. We don't see it too often. But here's some of the reasons why. Number one, most of us are carrying a folding knife, right? That's right. Well, this is Chris Fry's verbiage, and I think it's beautiful. That's a broken knife, right? It's a broken blade. Before you can use it, what do you have to do? You have to fix it, right? We already talked about that manipulation, right? Right. That's one extra step before we can get the knife out. And then where does everybody carry their folding knife?
Usually in their front pocket, either left front or right front.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this, and this is right in your lane. You can answer this better than most people. Is there any legitimate, respected, knowledgeable firearm instructor anywhere who'll say that it's just as easy to get a gun out of your pocket and it's just as easy and as fast as it is off the belt?
Oh, of course not.
Of course not. But yet, what are we doing? We're doing the exact same thing with the knife. We're carrying a broken blade, right, in our pocket.
I love that, by the way.
I know, that's Chris. The first time Chris said that, I was like, oh my God, yes, that, because you try to tell people sometimes the folder's not as good, but it's hard to get that idea across. But you tell them it's a broken knife, they go, oh yeah. You know what that is? The firearm equivalent of that is carrying a Glock 43 in your pocket with an empty chamber. Right? So you got to get it out of the pocket, which is tough, right? And before you can fire it, you got to do one extra physical action to chamber that round. But yet, we do that. Just because somebody's carrying around your cool guy folding knife does not mean you're going to automatically get into play, because we've already got all these issues. How many a lot of people carry in the pocket, right? Either as a backup gun or because of, dress issues or that kind of stuff. How many videos do we see of people getting a pocket gun out? Probably not.
I cannot think of one.
Exactly. But I know it happens. We can't say it, but we just don't see it because it's not as easy to do because of the setup. But we see people getting the gun off a belt holster all the time, right? A well set up, even in concealment. So when we're talking about the knife, if we really want to optimize it, now, obviously we can't always do this, right? Based on dress, for my business attire, I have to dress a certain way. I can't carry weapons the way I would like. But if we can, generally a small fixed blade knife, somewhere with the blade 2.5 to 4 inches long, somewhere in that range, carried forward of the hips on the belt. My preference is the handle angled diagonal downward like this. So the blade, the point is actually going up. Now, again, it's not mine. I'm not smart enough to come up with that. That Craig Douglas is the one who first really figured this out. Because here's what happens when you have this, so the handle's here and the blade's here. Now and it's carried forward of my hips. I can access that blade with either hand just by articulating my elbow like this. I can draw the knife like this, or I can draw the knife like this in a reverse grip, with the blade pointed out. But again, monkey with a screwdriver grip on either hand, and all I have to be able to do is to do this, and that blade comes out. So it's a very specific thing, I know, but if we're talking about optimizing it, where, hey, you want the best, that's the one where it's going to work the best.
Okay, so we're talking about carrying it on the outside of the belt here, right?
That's probably best, but I know a lot of people will carry it actually between the belt and the pants.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
But still with the blade pointing up?
Yeah. I know a lot of people who don't, but that diagonal angle with the point up gives you equal access with either hand, and you'll be able to equally start to go to work with the point without having to you don't have to do anything else. As soon as that hand grips the blade, boom. Hand grips the blade, boom. So you're simplifying this mechanic right? We're not having to, again, like you said, we're not having to worry about saber grip and switching to this and getting the right thing. Boom, monkey the screwdriver, pull, point. It's the easiest. It's the easiest way to get this into a fight, even with that guy on top of you, and there's barely any room to move.
Now, are you recommending carrying this on the strong side or the weak side? For instance, if you've got a gun on your strong side, is the knife going to be carried there too, or is it going to be carried?
I'm not, I'm not the tactical police, right? That says you got to do things this way. But what I think works better is I put it on the opposite side of my gun. So if I'm carrying strong side with the firearm, I'll put the knife on the weak side, right? I have a tendency, I carry appendix. So I carry about 1 o'clock-ish, 1:30-ish, and I'll put the knife about 1 o'clock-ish on the other side of the belt buckle.
Okay. I feel really bad now because I've got this whole pile of broken knives here.
Yeah, broken knives, exactly.
I feel off, and I've spent a lot of money on some of these things too.
Me too. But here's the thing. Now, here's the thing. There are times when, like I said, you can't carry the ideal thing. Just like it would be best if we could always carry, that full size pistol, right? On a outside the waistband holster, right? That would be the easiest, fastest way to get a gun into play. But come on, realistically, hey, we might not be able to carry. Hey, what's the full size Steyr? The M9?
The full size one is the L9.
L9. So I know you're a big fan, so I will do that. So you'd like to carry the L9 on an outside waistband, quick access holster, but maybe you got to go inside the waistband with what, the S9?
S9, yeah.
Something like that. It's not as good, but it's still pretty good. Same with the knife. Yeah. Would it be best to have that small fixed bladed knife carried forward to the hips on the belt? Yes. Okay. We can't. We've got to have a tucked in shirt or something. Okay. Then maybe a setup is, not to be a shill, but Chris Fry again invented this thing called the pocket shield, and it fits in your pockets like this Kydex thing. Yeah, those are cool. I carry a fixed bladed knife on it in my pocket.
Okay.
So it's a little bit easier. Okay, I can't do that. I'm in California. I can't do that. All right, I'll carry a folder. I'm in Oregon. I'll carry a folder. I'm in, Illinois. I'll carry a folder. It's we do the best we can. And that might be the best we can do is those folders.
I was going to say, because I know that I certainly know in California that fixed blade knives are like verboten.
Yep.
And in Oregon, I don't remember what the laws are, but they're kind of odd. You can carry certain, but not. I'd have to look up the laws, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So in terms of fixed blade knives, what fixed blade knife do you like?
Again, see, now you're gonna say I'm shilling for my friend,
go ahead.
Honestly, I think the Craig Douglas design clinch pick.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, and here's the funny thing. So everyone goes, "Oh, Cecil, yeah, you're going to say the clinch pick because he's your buddy." And so when I first started training and hanging out with Craig, and we started training together and working together, I hated the clinch pick. I was like, "That's stupid. It offends my Filipino knife geekness." Right? I hated that blade. I refused to do it. So I actually found a couple other blades to try to fit into that niche. I had a Bud Neely knife that Boker used to make. That was great knife.
That kind of a flat one, if I remember correctly.
Yes, exactly. And it was cheap. It was like $60. So it was a great blade. And I tried to use it, and it works. Don't get me wrong. It does work. I had a friend who actually was making my Kydex for my knives at the time. He loved the cold steel Culloden, I think.
Yeah.
Being same thing
of Scottish heritage, that's a good thing.
So exactly. And the cold steel version, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was it was like $30 or $40, and it was flat and had the right size blade. So there was guys who liked that. However, once I got my hands on a clinch pick and actually played with it, I'm like, oh, I see. all the stuff that looks stupid to me, there's a very specific reason why Craig designed it that way. It's got this weird egg-shaped handle. But what it is because it's as short a handle as you can get for concealment, but the egg still feels your hand, right? Whereas most other knives do that by having, a much longer handle, which doesn't help in concealment as much, and the blade, he designed the blade just long enough to where it was effective and you could do something, but it's still, again, it was easy to conceal. So there's plenty of blades that fit. Again, like I said, that 2.5 to 4 inch bladed with not too long a handle that you can get a sheath for, that you can carry, like, it's great. I just think the clinch pick is, it's very purpose designed, for that thing. And I don't think there's other stuff that works really well. I don't think there's anything better.
So we don't need to carry that big K-bar USMC fighting knife thing.
I wish, because again, I was a knife geek, so nothing better to me than carrying a giant Bowie knife all around. That would be awesome. One of my favorite movies to this day is still The Iron Mistress with Alan Ladd, where he played Jim Bowie. It's great.
Okay, I'll have to look that one up.
Bunch of knife fights. He's wielding this giant Bowie knife that looks like a sword, and a bunch of knife fights. It's great. I wanted to be Jim Bowie, right? I think I still do to some extent. I just know I can't. So.
Okay, so fixed blade knives, and obviously there are situations. Legalities are sometimes a concern, and actually, with all knives, but for some reason, the knife is very often seen as a I'm trying to find a good word for it. A
tool of the devil.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. We'll go with that.
I do think there's some of that. I think there's some aspect of that. I think very much, especially in the United States, we're very much a gun culture, and I think we've always been. If you read the accounts, there's a really good book, and I can't think of the author's name, on a history of Bowie knife and knife fighting. I think Paladin Press published it at one time. It's a really good book, and the guy went back and literally searched actual newspaper articles and stuff from 1840, 1850, and knife. And what you continually get across is people just look down on the knife. Oh, that thug Jim Bowie killed somebody with a knife. How dare he? Oh, and by the way, we had 3 duels at the same time where 3 other guys died by gunshot wound. How awesome. That's literally how so many of the people kind of looked at it, I think, in the US. So I think there is some of that, but I don't know. I think that's overblown as far as, having to be worried about it, for self-defense. Everybody I've talked to, guys like Masad Ayub and everybody who's actually looked at the legal stuff, it basically comes back. If it's a justifiable use self-defense, it doesn't matter if you did it with a knife, a gun, an end table, right? It's a justifiable thing. If it's not justifiable, it doesn't matter how you did it. You're in trouble.
Right.
There's not been one case yet anywhere where somebody had a justifiable self-defense but went to jail anyway because they used a knife, and the prosecutor said, oh, well, we're going to throw the book at you because you used a knife to defend yourself. It just doesn't exist.
Right.
Now, if you carry around a 10-inch bladed knife with, wavy blade and sawback and, runes and devil horns carved in it, now you might have a problem if you have to use that.
I can remember years ago being actually prior to 9/11, I had a rather burgeoning online business selling knives on eBay, selling collectible knives, lots of limited editions and Damascus steel and that kind of thing. And I can remember one of the places that I very often bought because I bought odd lots and remainders and things like that. And somebody had a bunch of these wavy Chris daggers that they wanted to get rid of. And I turned that deal down. It was a great deal. And I think they were Bokers or something. I don't remember, but I turned that deal down because I didn't really see much of a use for it.
Yeah, exactly. I played with those in a number of the Philippine, because it's a Filipino weapon, the Chris, and those kind of wavy blades. And so I trained with a lot of them a lot of times, and they were kind of fun to goof around with, but they're stupid. It's just there's like no utility with them at all. They're just stupid.
I did not realize those were Filipino. I don't know why I associate those with like medieval Europe.
No. They were huge. Most of the biggest usage of it is, Southeast Asia, Philippines, Indonesia, the archipelago and stuff like that. That's a big, there's a number of Indonesian martial arts systems, pencak silat systems, where the Chris was their underlying symbol of like the art, it's like the Chris.
Okay. Yeah. I had no idea. And I think I may have gotten this impression from like old movies, of the Middle Ages or something. And that may be where I got it. Once again, Hollywood is not a training source.
Exactly.
From a, I've run into very few cases of this, certainly in the shooting world, but I'm wondering if there's a difference in the knife world, if there is a reticence for people to actually, even in training with a training knife and all that kind of thing, actually go to stabbing people, knowing that there's going to be a lot of blood gushing forth and getting on them and that kind of thing. Do you see any emotional or any psychological issue with people maybe holding back and not doing that?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people doing that kind of training do it because it's a movie, right? Their image is still the movies or TV, and it's very antiseptic. It's very, like you said, you stab a guy once, no blood, and he collapses, and it's done. And I think when people start to realize that maybe there's more to it and it can get a little messier, that they're going to have an issue with that. And especially, I think that's made worse because up to fairly recently, we didn't have good training weapons, right? You had to be very careful. You could not, it was very difficult to do much contact work, much realistic contact work, because you'd hurt your partner in some way. But now we've got pretty good training things. We've got like soft foam, but that are firm, not like the cheap stuff, but that actually hold up, and they'll thud you when they hit, but they're not going to really do any damage. And you can start to actually have people now actually go and make contact with people. And I think it helps to get over that idea. Hey, fights can be bad. So just deal with that before you start training and not have to. But I do think it very much is always a problem, because people, again, we look to movies and TV as our guide of, how things look, which are never that way.
I think a lot of that is due to, again, in America being the gun-centric culture. The firearm is a relative, I'm going to use this word and don't take this the wrong way, but it's a relatively sanitary way to defend yourself. You're standing off, the bullet goes in, and contrary to what Hollywood shows, there's not a lot of blood, all that kind of thing. And perhaps the realization that, self-defense is sometimes a very, very messy business. Yeah. And maybe we should be confronting that rather than sort of denying it and hiding behind our gun.
Oh, I think so. I definitely think so. And I think there's a lot of reluctance, not just with the knife, but anything not of the gun, certainly any physical stuff. I don't want to punch that guy. I don't want to grab that guy. I don't want to roll around in the dirt with that guy. I don't want to, get close enough to a guy that I can pepper spray. I don't want to hit him with my flashlight. all that stuff. You start to get people in that very uncomfortable zone. But I think you better, then in jiu-jitsu, we always say, you got to learn to be comfortable in being uncomfortable. The sooner you can do that, the sooner you can get down to the business of training.
I would agree with that. I'm sitting here, by the way, I'm idly fiddling, because it's so much fun to open this up and hear it go, snap.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm reassembling my broken blade, and then I'm disassembling it again. And
there you go.
So, in which of your classes do you teach a specific knife class?
No. Like I said, the base is controlling the entanglement. The base is always going to be being able to having dominant positional control, whether you're standing or on the ground. And that dominant positional control may be you getting space, right? You getting away or keeping space so that the guy can't get close to you. That's dominant positional control. So my focus is always on that, doing that. If we can do that, we can then plug in whatever we need, whatever answer fits best. All right, I've made space from this guy. I've got 5 yards from this guy. Should I get a gun out? Should I get a knife out? Should I get an OC spray? Should I run? There's a room over there with a door that I can close. Can I run to there? Can I get into my car? Those things, I don't think it's as important to train that as much as it is getting to that point where we can do that. And really, that's the hard part, is getting to a point where I can get whatever tool out or whatever decision I need, I can do, especially if we start in this idea where I always start on my classes, that worst case scenario. You've screwed up. Yes, we should always be situationally aware. Yes, I understand that. But, there's a multi-billion-dollar industry designed to take our awareness away from us. And they're pretty good at that. And, with the real world. So, we can all get caught. I don't care how switched on you are. So if you start there, everything's going downhill. How do I get out of that? Get to the positional control that I need. Then I want to go to my gun. I want to do this. This is the best answer. I think so it's, on the one hand, we're training a knife every single minute of my classes. On the other hand, you only put the knife in your hand probably 10% of the time in the total class, but you're still training the knife 100% of the time, if that makes sense.
Right. And at the same time that you're training everything else 100% of the time.
Yep, exactly. Gun, pepper spray, all that, because all of it has a place. Every single thing has a place.
And again, we get back to the what we talked about, the idea of multi-use skills, things that you can reuse, which is a phenomenally aware way of training.
Yep.
Believe it or not, we have just about run out of time.
No way.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Wow. Whenever we get together, it's always like this. And geez. So really quickly, tell people where they can get in touch with you and see your training schedule and all that kind of thing.
The easiest way is to go to my website, iacombatives.com. You can always do a Google search, Immediate Action Combatives. I have a website. I've got a Facebook business page. I got an Instagram page. And I have a YouTube channel, all Immediate Action Combatives in some way. So I've got videos, and there's always a way to contact me through any of those places. And I try to keep my schedule up and, where I'm going to go. And I try to put up videos from the seminars and, hey, here's some of the stuff I cover. And I talk about this and I talk about this. I actually think at this point, I've probably given away about 80% of my coursework for free at some point.
So in addition to all those other places, I'm going to do a plug right here. In addition to all those other places that you can find Cecil, he's also got a bunch of videos up on the membership side of Personal Defense Network. And of course, you're watching this on the free side of Personal Defense Network, the public side right now, but we do have a membership side where we've got even more stuff like full-length DVD length stuff from Cecil in there. And well, how do you get access to this, you may ask? Well, it's real simple. All you have to do is click on, we've got places all over Personal Defense Network, where you can click up to sign up for premium membership, and just click on any of those things, fill out the information. But here's a deal for you. Usually it's premium membership is $39.95 a year, but because you're watching this show and because you heard Cecil talk about all this wonderful stuff, you can get your first year of premium membership at Personal Defense Network for only $10. And the way that you do that is, again, you click on any of the links that we've got, including the link on the show page, to sign up for premium membership. Fill out all the information, and at the checkout page, there's a little box down there for a coupon code or discount code. You'll find it, and simply put in this code, Grant10, Grant, the number 1, the number 0, all one word, Grant10. Put that in, and you'll get your first year membership for only $10. And so you'll be able to get a chance to look at all the great video collections and video courses and DVD length videos like the ones that Cecil has done. Believe me, they're terrific. I watched them. And of course, the online courses and everything else that we've got. So premium membership at Personal Defense Network, only $10 for your first year. Just remember this code, Grant10, Grant, the number 1, the number 0. And from our standpoint, if you'd like to send me an email, please send me your email, grant@grantcunningham.com. I'm always happy to get those and respond to those. And we'll be back here doing another edition of Training Talk 2 weeks from tonight. And that is the 1st of March, I think. Something like that. I'm going to have to look now. I don't even know when that is, but March, yes, the 1st of March, March 1st, Thursday, March 1st, again, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, same place. And of course, be sure to check out the Personal Defense Network training tour, which starts up. First class is mine, March 17th and 18th in Phoenix. And if you can make it, there's still some slots open for that class. And you can find out more about that, of course, on my site. And here in the next week, we will have up the training tour schedule with links for all the classes that you can click on and sign up directly from the Personal Defense Network training tour schedule, including Cecil's classes that he's going to be teaching all over the country.
I promise Rob I will get it to him tomorrow so he can get off my back.
Okay. And so with that, we will let you all go for tonight. Thank you for tuning in and for being part of the show. And Cecil, thanks for another great show. Wonderful information.
Thanks for having me on. I always have a good time.
Oh, it's always a fun time. And don't worry, folks, we'll have him back soon. So everybody stay safe. We'll see you March the 1st on another edition of Training Talk. Bye-bye.